Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. It's Eric here with E&M Guns. So, I'm in the middle of a 30-day challenge, and I can honestly tell you guys, I am seeing a lot more of content gun-related than I ever have. So, it does work. You can get YouTube to give you what you want once in a while. But I'm going to talk about today is, in Idaho, is there really a gun-free zone? Constitutional carry state? The answer may surprise you. So back in July, I contacted the ISAA, which is the Idaho Second Amendment Alliance, run by Greg Pruett. It's a Second Amendment foundation here in Idaho, and you're thinking to yourself, well, you guys are a constitutional carry state. What are you guys fighting for? Well, there's a few public venues that are owned by the city that are gun-free zones. They're not private entities. They're owned by taxpayer dollars, but they're run by a separate entity, and that's how the cities are getting away with making it a gun-free zone. Well, that's fine, except for most mass shootings are happening at gun-free areas. That's because a mass shooter doesn't want to get shot at. He's not picking on he's not picking on a police station. He's not picking on an area that he knows has got security. He's looking for the easy soft target, and that's where gun-free zones come into a worrisome dilemma for us. I'll let Greg Pruett over here at Idaho Second Amendment Alliance explain it in better detail for you.
Greg Pruett here, president of the Idaho Second Amendment Alliance. This is episode 2 of Guns with Greg. Welcome and thank you for watching. Please be sure to like, share, and all that good stuff. You may be watching on various platforms. We always encourage our members to ensure that you are subscribed to our Rumble channel. With all the censorship and stuff that happens on YouTube and all these other platforms, we'll continue to put out our message wherever we can, but Rumble is kind of our last resort. Please go there. Please watch there if you want to. We actually can make a little bit of ad revenue from Rumble, which is nice compared to other platforms. So please be sure to do that. All right. So I got a number of notifications from ISAA supporters and members about the Caldwell Night Rodeo. And the Caldwell Night Rodeo has decided that they are going to implement a gun-free zone at their event this week. Now, one of the main questions is, can they do that? And here's where Idaho's law and an Idaho Supreme Court ruling from a couple of years ago are really starting to impact gun owners, and the frustration is growing. We tried to tell people this after the Idaho Supreme Court gave this opinion a couple of years ago. Excuse me. But we said, yeah, so here's the issue at hand. Idaho has what's called a preemption law, and that means on public property, cities and counties have basically no authority to regulate the possession of firearms. And that means that they can't come up with their own ordinances and gun-free zones and all this other kind of stuff. Well, right now in the Canyon County Fairgrounds, they can't do that. The county can't do that. But what the Idaho Supreme Court said is okay is if a private entity is going to use the public property, they're going to allow them to turn it into a gun-free zone. So the county and the city don't have the authority to turn that public property into a gun-free zone, but they're basically saying that if a private entity wants to do it, that's their choice. Now, we disagree with that. In fact, a lot of gun owners in other states and attorneys that have looked at the Idaho Supreme Court opinion are kind of flabbergasted. Because here's the reality. If you were to ban guns, or excuse me, not ban guns, but let's say you were going to hold an event on the fairgrounds and you said this religion or this race or this sex or this anything other than guns is banned, you'd end up getting taken to court, and they'd end up saying, oh yeah, you can't do that. But as usual in the courts, gun owners are always treated as second-class citizens. So we're still fighting that. We're still working to change the preemption law to make it a lot better. But nevertheless, setting all that aside, the Caldwell Night Rodeo, by their own choice, has chosen to make their event a quote-unquote gun-free zone. And as we know, we're saying quote-unquote because criminals don't care. Mass shooters, someone hell-bent on going in that place and shooting it up is going to find a way to do it. Now,
hey everybody, Christy with you again here at the Caldwell Night Rodeo. We went up to the ticket booth and asked if we could see whoever was in charge of the event here tonight or talk to someone with the board of directors, and we were told that they just weren't available to deal with us on this issue tonight. So what we're going to do is we will mail these petitions to the directors of the rodeo. Now, they're telling us that, you know, they've leased the grounds to a third-party organization and they have a right to set their own rules and regulations.
So if you go over to the Idaho Second Amendment Alliance, or ISAA, and you go to the Action Center, and it gives you alerts and all that. But here's a signing petition. So we got, you know, activities here for us as gun owners in Idaho to take part in. And the one in particular with Christy, Senator, was this one right here, Caldwell Nights Gun-Free Zone. And this not only applies to Caldwell Nights, but I mean there's a fairground found in any city in any county in the state. And I'm pretty sure they're probably all run by separate entities that make their own rules. So if you live in Idaho, I strongly encourage you to join the Idaho Second Amendment Alliance. Greg Pruett, been doing it for about 13 years. He's got a channel on Rumble. He does a lot more stuff with it than he does on YouTube. Looks like he's just starting to post again on YouTube. But again, that's the Idaho Second Amendment Alliance. Guys, I encourage you to visit that webpage, see the petitions that you can get support behind, and put your support behind, and put our support into making Idaho the best gun-loving state in the country. You guys have a blessed week. Love you. Peace out.